Good afternoon. I will need a host to give me access to share my screen, please, for the presentation for UI.
Sure, one moment.
Thank you.
This is
Okay, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to docket number 241004, which is PIRA's docketed proceeding to consider the application of the United Illuminating Company to amend its rate schedule. My name is Marissa Gillette. I'm the chair of the Public Utilities Regulatory Authority. I'm joined virtually today by my colleagues, Commissioners Michael Karen and David Arconti. We also have on the line a number of representatives from the United Illuminating Company. I also see Consumer Counsel Claire Coleman. Thank you for joining us. So the purpose of today's proceeding is to receive public comment regarding the application pending before us. If this is your first time participating in a PURA proceeding, let me just provide a couple of housekeeping notes. This is a public comment hearing. It is part of PURA's 350-day proceeding to consider the application by the company. We have evidentiary hearings beginning in a couple of weeks, and that is because PURA is a quasi-judicial agency that will consider the application before us. So for purposes of today's hearing, we will be receiving comment from members of the public, but PURA, neither myself nor my fellow commissioners will be answering questions today. Rather, we are here to listen to you and to use any public comment that we receive today to help shape our thinking as we prepare for the evidentiary hearings that will begin in several weeks. In just a moment, we will turn the virtual floor over to the company. We have asked them to provide a brief presentation regarding what they have requested from PURA regarding their rates application. The slide deck that they are sharing is available on PURA's website. Before we turn it over to members of the public, I'll offer a couple of these reminders again. If you know that you would like to provide comment this afternoon, we would invite you to locate the raise hand function and go ahead and get into the queue to do so. If you are new or newer to Zoom, you can locate the raise hand function under the reactions tab at the bottom of your screen. When it becomes time to take comment from members of the public, I will turn to that queue and take folks in the order that we receive them in. This is not your last opportunity to weigh in on the application. We do also take comment in writing, but this is our final live public comment hearing for this application. Without further ado, I will turn it over to, I see Mr. Canavan, and I believe I just need to make sure I give your colleague the right sharing privileges. So bear with me 1 second. Okay. So I think the privileges have been enabled, so we will turn the virtual floor over to the company for their brief presentation.
Great. Good afternoon, Chair Gillette and Commissioners Karen and Arconti. Thanks for allowing us the opportunity to provide a overview of our rate case application. And we're just going to wait. There it is. So we have a few slides we'd share with the group today, and thanks for joining us. All right, Allie, we can go to slide 2, I think. Whenever we're talking to folks, it's always good to ground, who the company is. The United Illuminating Company serves 17 towns here on the coastline. It's a subsidiary of a company called Avangrid. It was established 100 years ago, and it serves approximately 345,000 customers in this area. Most of Connecticut, as you may know, is served by a few municipal providers, as well as a larger company called Eversource. Eversource is not associated with UI or Avangrid. It's a completely separate entity. In today's proceeding, we're going to focus on the application associated with providing safe and reliable electric service to the 17 towns you see on our screen right now. So let's go to the next page. So our rate case will do the following. It's designed to allow the company to continue to maintain safe and reliable service. As an electric company here in Connecticut, that is our core mission, is to provide electric service to residential customers throughout our service territory. We think the rate case has been designed to properly fund our capital program to ensure some foundational investments going forward. As you may know or may guess, the electric grid requires constant investment from a capital perspective. And we think the rate case that we provided to PURA for review will allow us to continue to make those foundational investments going forward. We do find ourselves here at UI in a position where we have $286 million invested in the system, but have not yet been reflected in rates. And what that means is the company has flowed that money into the system. Customers are using those investments today in their daily lives, but we've not received a return on or of that investment in rates. And we think that's one of the issues that PURA will have to address in this rate proceeding. The rate case also includes a number of costs that are outside our company's control, and that's just a fancy way of saying largely that inflationary pressures on the company are mounting. And things that cost $5 5 years ago now cost $7 or $8, and our rates need to reflect that cost increase over that time. And certainly we're in a position here with UI that restoring the financial integrity of the company, allowing the company a rate plan that gives it an opportunity to earn a fair return, we think is very important for this company to maintain safe and reliable service going forward. As I noted, that is our core mission, and we need a rate plan that will support our continued service in our territories going forward. So with that, we can go to the next slide. So we also want to talk a little bit about our bills a little bit and talk about what this case is about and what it's not about. All your bills generally have 4 different buckets of costs on them. I'll go through these in a little bit of detail, but an overview here is your supply costs over on the left. These are the costs that go to the generator's electricity. UI is not a generator. It only delivers electricity from where it's produced to your home or business so you can consume it. So the supply portion of your bill, you can think of those generation stations that are actually creating electricity. And there's certainly a cost. A lot of those costs are largely driven by market pressures because electricity is a commodity. These costs flow to your bill with no markup. UI makes no money on this portion of the bill. It is a complete pass-through. If you are in third-party supply, this is where you would find your third-party supplier. If you don't purchase electricity from a third-party supplier and you are on UI standard service rate, this is where you would see those costs on your bill. Second category is transmission. So when you think about the electrical system, the transmission portion of the bill really reflects the costs required to deliver electricity from the generators to your local neighborhood. So when you see the large transmission lines in town or cutting across our state, those are the electricity highways, if you will. That's what you would think of when you see your transmission costs. UI is a transmission owner, so there are some certain costs here that flow to UI, but that is not part of this rate case. Transmission costs are largely regulated by the federal government down in DC. So the 12% of your bill on this example that flow from the transmission costs are not part of this actual rate case. The local delivery charge, which you can see is circled in orange, and on this example is about 30% of your bill. This is what this case is all about. These are the costs that UI needs to charge to maintain its system, to pay its employees, to continue to invest in the system. This is what the case really entails. So when you think about your local distribution charge, you should really only think that about 30% of your bill or 30% of every dollar you pay to UI every month really goes to maintaining UI's distribution system. The remaining 70% flow to other entities largely. The final portion of the bill, I should say, is the public benefits charge. And you may have heard a lot about this charge in the news or in the press. This is, in this example, 14% of the bill. This is where you might see the millstone charge or electric vehicle charging programs or a low-income discount rate. This is the largely mandates driven by legislative policies that find their way onto your bill, and we now call them the public benefits charge. So that is your bill in a snapshot. And again, the takeaway here is that a couple things. One, only 30% of your bill goes to UI, and the rate proceeding we're talking today about, in which Pura will oversee and hold hearings on in late April or in May, is really only focused on the local delivery charges. All right, I think we can go to the next slide. So here are some case elements for those that are interested. Last rate case was in 2022. You might be thinking, how do we get here if we just had a rate case in a few years ago? Well, in 2022, UI presented a 3-year rate case to Pura that we thought would maintain and provide some rate stability through 2026. Pura elected to only approve 1-year rate case, and that is why we're back probably sooner than we would like to be. Just because those costs were not approved doesn't mean they don't exist. They certainly do. And we think that those costs that we see now and proceed through the rate year need to be embedded into our rates. So that's why we're back a little bit sooner than we would all like. Test year is really just our fancy rate making term to say we're basing this case on our actual costs in 2023. And we will talk to Pura about adjustments for the new rates that are effective November 1, 2025, and will flow through October 30th, 2026. A couple of rate mechanisms we like to talk about with customers that we think are important for both customers and the company. These are rate mechanisms that exist now. We think they should be maintained in the future. This is the revenue decoupling mechanism. Since we charge you on a volumetric basis, and what that really means is the more energy you consume, the higher your bills go. It's possible that the amount of money that the company collects is either higher or lower than the revenue requirement set by Pura. The revenue decoupling mechanism makes sure that no one pays more or less than they should be from a company perspective. We only collect from customers exactly what Pura allows. And then the earnings sharing mechanism is a way that if we do earn more than our allowed ROE, we would split that 50-50 with customers. This incentivizes the company to create cost savings where it can. And if we're successful at that, customers will enjoy 50% of that basis as well. Those mechanisms exist currently, and we think they should continue in the future. Sometimes in rate cases, you talk about additional employees. We have a very modest incremental rate employee request of additional 5 employees. So we're excited to talk to Pura about what's driving those hiring decisions. And if we go to the next slide, we can hit a few more items. So here it is. Overall, we're looking for a revenue deficiency in a total ask of $105 million. That's largely driven by the $286 million currently invested in the system that's not been reflected in rates just yet. And since we filed the case and through the end of the rate year, we anticipate investing almost an additional $200 million. And we think that should be presented in rates now so we can continue to make those investments over the next year and a half. All told, rate case total bill impact is approximately 10% per residential bill or $25 a month. And that is based on the case, how it was filed. We understand that Pura and others will have a viewpoint on what the revenue requirement should be going forward. And we are now in that process. We filed this case back in November. It will not be resolved till the end of October. Right now, we're in the phase which we call discovery, where we've been answering questions posed by Pura, by the Office of Consumer Counsel, and other parties. We've answered, I think, almost 1,700 data requests so far, and we expect that number to rise. And then we will move into the next phase of the proceedings, which is the hearing phase, which will look to many of you like a courtroom, where company representatives will appear, respond to questions posed by Pura and other parties, and to further explore our rate case ask. And we look forward through that process that'll resolve in early May. Thereafter, Pura will have a few months to develop a draft and final decisions, which will come out in October with new rates on November 1. So if we go to the next slide, we can talk a little bit about what these investments will look like. So when we think about capital investments that the system requires, a couple of things come to mind. Certainly, we are driven by customer investments, right? So when new customers come on our system, they certainly, some new customers may require additional capital investment. Certainly when DG arrives, there's certainly new capital investments associated with those customers. We also have customer service technology upgrades and third-party pole attachments, which continues to be an issue of concern in the UI territory. But clearly the driver is system capacity, reliability, and resilience. You know, we have great reliability in UI's territory. We are in the top quartile nationally. You may not agree with that given your experience, but our stats show that the average customer only receives an outage once every 20 months, and that's right up there at the top of the list when we compare ourselves to our peer entities. And certainly when you compare our service that we provide to other utility-like services, I think it starts to ring true. I mean, how many times does your phone drop or your internet lock up, or how many times do you have to reboot your computer? And we've certainly normalized in society those types of challenges, but that's not the types of challenges that our customer sees with UI's electric service. UI is there every time that you turn that switch on, and most of our customers enjoy very reliable service, so much so that you don't really think about it until there's a storm or a certain outage on the system. But to continue that level of service will require additional investments in capacity. So we think about transformers and substation build-outs. We think about reliability. You know, we certainly have circuits on the system that require additional investment than others. There's this concept of the worst performing circuits. So we continue to invest in those circuits to make sure that they are providing service as intended. And then resiliency. You know, certainly when we invest in the system, many of these hard assets are deployed for decades. And certainly in some areas of our service territory, some of the investments that were made many years ago are coming up on the end of their useful life. And we think that continuing to invest and replace those assets on a regularly schedule, not before they fail, is the best process for everyone. Certainly customers do not see an interruption. And certainly the cost containment is at least easier to achieve if investments are made continuously as opposed to waiting for systems to fail. Other things to be thinking about: facilities and training. You know, it's critical that we have a high performing workforce, and certainly the lineman ranks are harder and harder to fill as we move into the future. So working with our unions to make sure we have a professional workforce is important for the company. IT systems and cybersecurity. This is very critical for utilities across the nation, and UI is no exception. We feel that continued investments in our cybersecurity program is important as the threats continue to evolve from a cybersecurity perspective. And then certainly our trucks, as you see them out there on the streets throughout our 17 towns, some of those trucks are coming up for the need of replacement, and that is part of our capital program as well. All right, Ellie, we can go to the next slide. So Chair Gillette, I think you've noted in the last couple of sessions, we've had customer service teams present when we've done this in person. You know, a little cumbersome here virtually, but we did want to make people to be made aware of that there are some upcoming opportunities in March 26th in Bridgeport and April 17th in New Haven. If they need to speak with a customer service representative, they are going to be at these events, and we're happy to put this in the chat so people can see it if that's helpful. And then we can go to the next slide. So if you're on this call today, I encourage you that continue to be involved in the case. This is our third and final public comment hearing, and the chair in a few minutes will open up the floor so you can provide comments. A couple other things to keep in mind. We have 10 hearing days coming up in April and May. You can certainly attend the hearings. You can certainly write to PURA. If you identify a UI rate case, PURA will make sure it gets to the right place. And certainly, you know, we have PURA's contact information as well as UI to the extent you want to reach out to the folks at the authority or at UI to talk about the case further. And with that, Chair Gillette, I think brings an end to our presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Canavan. If you are joining us now and we're not here for the opening announcements, I'm just going to cover a couple of reminders, and then we will turn it over to anyone wishing to provide public comment. The first point I would make is if anyone does wish to provide public comment as part of today's proceeding, it asks that you enter the virtual queue. You can do so by locating the raise hand function at the bottom of the screen under the React tab. So we will take public comment in the order that the hands are raised there. Next, as the slide on the screen indicates, if you would prefer to provide public comment in writing to that email address, you're welcome to do so, but this is our final public comment hearing before we move into the evidentiary proceedings that begin later in April. Additionally, as I stated at the outset, myself and my colleagues are unfortunately not here to answer questions today, but rather we are receiving comment from members of the public so that can inform our thinking as we're preparing for these hearings. PURA itself will not render a judgment on the utilities request until later this year, I believe in October. Lastly, we do have a court reporter with us today who will be transcribing the proceedings so that they can become part of the official record. Because of that, we ask that folks provide their comments verbally. The chat function has been disabled so that we can receive the comments into the record and record them appropriately. So again, I will ask for folks to enter the queue by locating the raise hand function, which is under the React tab at the bottom of your screen. And we will pause here to see if there are any individuals who would like to register a comment this afternoon. Okay, I'm not seeing any individuals enter the queue. We will remain on the line for another minute to make sure that folks have the opportunity to locate that function. Again, the raise hand function is under the React tab at the bottom of the screen. Okay, thank you. I see Edward Lavernock. I apologize, but yeah, the floor is yours, sir. We'll just make sure we can get you off mute there.
Thank you. Yes, my name is Edward Labrinowicz. I appeared before you on January 27th, the public hearing that you held in Bridgeport. And I'm not going to risk going through my entire remarks that night. I just want to emphasize that I feel more than ever that preservation of the budgets that Avangrid puts forward to continue service reliability within the region is one of our great strengths in attracting economic investment to the region, and also critically important for protecting individual households. I think we're all aware of the struggles that individual households go through in this modern era with a whole bunch of budget pressures, but it's really catastrophic, and I've seen this play out at the neighborhood level in the inner city when people lose an entire freezer or of food, or can't can't operate their households and account on their households functioning to get them up and out to work or school in the morning. So that it's critically important to preserve reliability. And as I've gotten to understand Avangrid UI's commitment to reliability and upgrading what is a very dated infrastructure within their region in a very earnest way. I think that they should be provided with the support to do that. And so that in brief is the feeling that I want to express to you today.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
James Wisniewski.
Hello. I joined a bit late. It's possible this was covered before, but if I think of how to phrase this in the form of a comment, I would like to see some more information about the likely impact on residential customers on both the R and the RT rates as a result of this change. The email that we received earlier briefly mentioned one thing, but if at some point we get a little more expansion on that and how those predictions were determined, that might be useful for people.
Thank you. I appreciate your comment. Anyone further? Okay, if not, I want to thank everyone for attending our third and final public comment hearing this afternoon. Again, while this is our last live public comment hearing, we are still accepting comments from the members of the public on the application in writing, which can be sent to Pura by email at the email address pura.executivesecretary@ct.gov. The next step in our proceeding will be to move to evidentiary hearings, which start at the end of April. And as Mr. Canavan covered in his presentation, will take the form of hearings where parties, including the company, present witnesses and have the opportunity to be cross-examined by other stakeholders and Pura. After that, we'll move towards issuing a draft decision in this matter, which I believe comes out in September before the final is voted on in October. So I want to thank everyone for your engagement today and in the docket so far. And with that, I believe we are adjourned. So wish you a good